recording. Record any second now. Here we go. Welcome to this week's episode of Work the Left Side. I am joined by Stixx, one of the original big men of what I call the new generation of British wrestling, or the OG modern era wrestling. Hope that kind of makes sense. That's sort of talked about it with people before. And I thought, for me, British wrestling kind of resurged sort of late noughties, mid noughties, late noughties. I kind of put you, Haskins, RJ, being those guys at the forefront of that.
Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, I like being called an OG. Mainly because I see people of like Johnny Storm and Doug Williams as like my OGs. You know, they were the guys I looked up to when I got into it. But it's funny actually that you mentioned Haskins, because it's quite funny that like me and RJ, for example, we came from a certain time, and there were some other people around that time. But Haskins was actually the next wave of people, you know, and in that group was people like Kirby, for example, Joseph Connors, came about at that time, CJ Banks, like, and all that. So if that's the crew that you were thinking of, then that makes me and RJ like pre-OG, you know. So maybe granddad OG.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably a few years difference between, but for me, like when British wrestling repeaked again, like say late noughties, with like your South Sides, your NGWs, PCWs, the Progress and things like that, guys just talked about. You guys were all sort of like, leading the pack. So kind of, even though there's a few years between you, so Clash is all been part of the same kind of time period.
Yeah, no, I get that. We're all very close as well, like in the wrestling sense. Like the amount of times we all wrestled each other, just whilst we're waiting for other people to kind of come up, to give us fresh meat, so to speak. But it was like, us again, and you knew it was going to be, you knew you're going to have fun, you knew you're going to have a good match, but sometimes you just had to roll your eyes and just go, oh, like, you're not booked anyone else yet. There's no one else come up yet. Come on. It's like,
yeah, I suppose that's the problem though, because you guys were like, obviously got like Rampage in there, massive as well. And obviously when you sort of came into wrestling, there wasn't many big guys, like guys of overly muscular guys, like what I'd call like huge dudes for the British scene.
Yeah.
There's like you, Pop Shady, and a few other guys, probably of like muscular guys.
Yeah, well, I mean, even in those days, I really didn't know how to train properly. Kind of pre 2009, I was just a dude who went to the gym. Just happened to be a little over 6 foot, and was just kind of big naturally. But back in those days, you didn't have to have like a huge muscular physique to look like a big guy, because a lot of the wrestlers didn't know how to train properly. They're all wearing like pleather shorts and pleather trousers, wrestling in vests, and t-shirts and stuff like that. It was a whole different era, and you see a very big change in my physique around the 2010 time, and that was when one of my friends now became a personal trainer and moved in next door to where we had our wrestling school. So I started training with him, and he started forcing me to do exercises that I'd never really wanted to do before, or I was no good at, and through that, it got a lot better results, So I think even around the 2010, 2011, 2012 time, still there wasn't that many big guys, but I honestly think that's where I really got noticed, like around those times. And I don't know whether I would have. What was that? Sorry.
I think you definitely stood out.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know whether I would have though, had I not started taking my training seriously, and kind of sculpted my body a little bit more, to be ready for those kind of opportunities. And I always tell my students now, like, don't wait until an opportunity comes along, because chances are those opportunities won't come along until you look ready for them, or you wrestle like you're ready for them, so get ready now, and then you're ready for when something opens up. Otherwise, they probably won't even come, especially nowadays when there's probably about 10 times the amount of wrestlers in this country as there was when I started,
That's it. I mean, obviously, anybody who's watched the show knows we've had RJ on. Obviously, talked about his beginnings, your beginnings, and like sort of the limited amount of schools there was back then compared to, I think there's one in every town now, or at least one in every town.
Yeah.
It seems.
I hate RJ. Just wanted to put it out there. Nah, he's my he's one of my besties. But yeah, back then, I mean, to highlight this, I was living in London at the time, and we had to travel not that far, considering, down to Kent. When we very first started training, because the Hammerlock School down there was one of the only schools that was around. I didn't drive, so going down to Portsmouth, where the FWA Academy was literally just starting up, probably wouldn't have been, a very great move. Other than those two, I think there was maybe one around Birmingham way, Coventry way, and then there was a couple up in Scotland, and that is literally the only schools that I knew of, back in 2001 time. But now, yeah, there's probably a school in every major city at least. Whether any of them are actually any good, you can probably tell by the teacher. Luckily there are more good schools than bad schools nowadays. With good facilities, you don't have to, train on judo mats, like we had to. Although I think it kind of builds character a little bit. You get a lot of the more experienced people around this area, like coming into the school that we've got now, and sometimes they just look around and go, this current lot just really don't realise how lucky they are.
So dirty training or nice, clean, air conditioning and all sorts.
Well, it's not the WWE PC, but we do our best.
How's the school going? Is it you got a good butching at the minute?
Yeah, it's going great. I mean, we do how many? About 9 classes a week.
Okay.
A lot of the days are kind of double days. Like there's a smaller class and then a longer class. Looking at different things. I'd say we hover around the 100 students mark. Between the different levels and the different ages and stuff like that. So yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, it's built to that though. I mean, I never got into wrestling thinking, oh yeah, I want to end up teaching. I just kind of fell into it. Maybe we'll get to that story, but I just love it when I hear that someone's opening up a school now and it's going to be a full-time school, and I'm like, where are your students coming from? Like, do you have any idea how much it costs to kind of maintain, a school like that? Even if it is just a small building, with one ring, and you want it to be full time, especially nowadays, like with the energy prices going up, the electricity, and God forbid the heating, for the next couple of months is going to be astronomical. I mean, the lure of maybe having a school that's 24 hours, 7 days a week, might be appealing to some, but I think that appeal will quickly,
You've got to do it
yeah,
24 hours.
yeah,
And get like 1 or 2 people that want to train at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, well, I mean, the appeal is definitely going to die for them when the electricity bill comes through. That's for sure. You know, they'll go back to once a week after that.
But we was talking about the school before I hit record. It was all about what I class your 4 pillars. You should use 4 names at me. It's like being, you class as your alumni, your 4 proud, your 4 proud members. Want to shout them out?
Yeah, I mean, it's weird actually because the school has undergone name changes over the years. You know, when I first moved to Nottingham, it was under the NBW name, Norton British Wrestling, run by a gentleman called Jerry Norton, who has appeared on the Jeremy Kyle show 4 times. 4 times, ladies and gentlemen, him and his family. There must be a record. So through that era, there was Paul Malin, Joseph Connors, probably a few others that are more kind of locally known, that are in and out. Danny Chase, and the guy that we recently has returned called Dave Breaks, who is a fantastic technician, that I wish hadn't taken a break, but then for a couple of years it turned into Slam Wrestling, and in that era you had Diamond Dave Andrews, and again just like a few people coming through, and then it's only really been House of Pain Wrestling since 2010. That was when, after years of me kind of doing everything, I realized, well, if I'm doing everything, why am I not just running it myself and kind of reaping the whatever benefits come to it, but through that era, obviously Gabriel Kidd is doing fantastic at the minute. Over in Japan, I believe he's just entered the New Japan Tag Tournament. I don't really watch Japanese wrestling, so I don't know what it's called, but I just catch up with it on his social media. Someone who seems to be doing very well at the minute is Kanji, the Asian sensation, Progress Women's Champ. She is absolutely fantastic, and I don't know if any of your listeners kind of follow what's happening throughout the Midlands. Yeah,
I think there's a few.
Yeah, I think nowadays it's a lot easier to keep track of wrestlers because of like the online presence and stuff like that. But yeah, so many are doing well, like Riley Nova, Franco Fate. There's a tag team called Money Mountain who seem to be just getting everywhere at the minute. But yeah, no, it's going great, and even people like Ivy and Adam Bolt, who kind of came to us from another school, and have credited the school in making them twice as good as they were when they arrived. That kind of stuff means a lot as well, because if you're willing to travel from a city that has a wrestling school in it, to my wrestling school, then how can you not take that as a compliment?
Oh, definitely, and it speaks volumes, like what said. But just the list of names you've mentioned there. Obviously, I can't think of the word. Graduates, we'll call them graduates. People who have graduated from the school. The names hold a lot of merit within the business. So yeah, why would you not? I suppose if you know that this school is gettable to, go to it. So. Obviously, you mentioned like Aussie Hope. The scene in the Midlands. I'm a Nottingham boy living in Leeds nowadays. I'm
Nice.
still a boy, so that's why I'm hoping there's some people from the Midlands that do pay attention to this.
Fantastic.
Obviously, I used to remember going to Southside, all the time. I think that's hugely missed in the area. So, I mean, how you find any new promotions that I should, venture back down to Nottingham or around the area for?
Well, I mean, there's always a really good scene here. Like, I never worry about any of it kind of being competition for me because the shows that I put on, are attached to the school, and you know, you could call them trainee shows, like a lot of people, would call them trainee shows because the only people that appear on the shows are people from the school. But when you think about some of the names I've just read out, they're more than happy to jump back in on the local shows. So when you've got names like that on the show, like how can they really be considered trainee shows? But because we've been around for so long, we've built our audience. So if anyone else was to come and promote in Nottingham, which many have, I don't really worry about it being seen as competition, so to speak, because we've got our fans. They come to our shows, they enjoy our shows, and I've had quote unquote more famous wrestlers on, these shows, and half the audience doesn't even know who they are. So they don't follow the scene. They just come to our shows every month because they enjoy watching the local wrestlers. They enjoy the way the local wrestlers interact with them, and they know it's a fun night. So if they had the choice to come and watch our promotion or a brand new promotion that they know nothing about, most of them are going to come to us because they know it's going to, at least they're going to have fun. But
they get invested in the storylines, like I say, they get invested in the growth of the people involved and stuff like that.
yeah, and I think the wrestlers enjoy almost becoming like local celebrities. When some of the fans see them out and about in the street, or because they all live in Nottingham or around Nottingham, they see them in the street, or God forbid, in their day jobs, and they go, "Oh, aren't you so and so?" And they're like, "Yeah," whilst they're wearing their smart clothes, and I think one was actually a bus driver, which I found hilarious. That someone got on the bus and paid for their ticket and looked up and went, "Aren't you?" It's like, no, I'm not. And this was one of like the monster hills. So I can only imagine what they thought he was going to drive like. Ima- im- yeah, imagine Umaga driving a bus.
That's all. Love it. But yeah, I'll shout out again. Southside, I really do miss that promotion because I just think it was awesome. There was always felt some really good shows. Also, no hope do as well. I just think they worked really well. So I've had obviously. I think the first time I ever saw you was at a Southside show. Like I said, you just stood out. That's what I mean.
Thank you.
Like, because
I
yeah, no
think,
offense, a lot of the guys at that time, but they was all not lean, but not built like jacked. I would say,
sure.
you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. I think
Uh,
that
definitely sort of jumped out.
I think that was a market kind of for me because back in those days there was a lot of kind of quicker, more technical wrestlers. Like you mentioned Haskins, obviously guys like Zack Sabre Jr. was still around at the time. Um, Chris Travis, RJ, CJ Banks, Martin Kirby, all these kind of wrestlers, and they're all tremendous workers. But I always thought to myself, in my style, that I felt like I offered the show, that I was always going to be able to do it better than if they did that style.
Yeah.
Much like if I tried their style. Like it, yeah, it might look okay. And like I might hit a lucky day and it might look tremendous. But I think everyone had their thing that they were good at, and that's what made the Southside shows so good. I'll always remember. I'll see it as one of my career highlights, being able to close the company. Me and Sean Custom, in the ladder match, final match of the existence of Southside, you know, and it was a real honour to be put in that match, you know, even though he was halfway to the venue and Sean Custom realised he'd forgot his belt, which I thought was hilarious, you know, big night like this, you know, big title match, last match of the company's history, you know, and yeah, don't worry about the belt, it's not important.
Shocking. Oh, devastated. I mentioned Southside. Obviously, seen you all over the top as well. You've wrestled for pretty much, I think, any promotion, like any promotions in the country. NTW, PCW. Obviously, you've hit Leeds as well. You've hit Tidal.
Yeah.
Yes, every Progress. You've been everywhere.
Yeah.
I was looking through your cage match as well, man, and your matches read like a who's who of international talent as well. I mean, I saw like Abyss was in there, Chavo Guerrero was in there, Super Crazy, D'Lo Brown. I'm looking through these names. Was it like working with those guys when they came over? Was it, you take it as a compliment that you were trusted to?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's weird. I always said when it came to working with imports, you know, as everyone calls them, I think I peaked too early, you know. And what I mean by that is, obviously, I was trained by Alex Shane back in the day, and Alex Shane was responsible really for the first couple of import heavy super shows, you know, that happened on this country. 2005 at the Coventry Sky Dome, you had International Showdown and Universal Uproar. And on that Universal Uproar, which I believe was November, because you had a lot of import versus import matches, you know, that could be seen as exhibition matches, you know, he really wanted like a very babyface versus heel heavy match on this one. So it turned out it was an 8-man hardcore match, you know, elimination, and it was me, Martin Stone, who now obviously went on to become Danny Burch in NXT, Iceman, who's still hovering around the northern hardcore scene. I believe his son has got involved in it now as well.
W a couple of months ago.
Oh yeah, excellent. And Alex himself, against a guy called Paul Travell, who was a hardcore wrestler from down south, Portsmouth way. Steve Carino, who obviously ECW, the Sandman, ECW, and of all people, Mick Foley. You know, so in 2005, it was a really big deal for Foley to actually do a match, because he was technically retired, you know, or as retired as someone like Mick Foley can be. You know, I believe the original idea was for him to be a special referee, and when another plan fell through, he just said, "Well, why don't I just do a match?" You know, and then when Alex rang me to tell me that I was going to be, you know, in this match, you know, like mind blown, you know, 4 years into the business, and I don't care what anyone says about Foley, whether they're a fan of his work or anything like that, but if your name wasn't Austin or Rock, you know, he was just below those two, you know, along with Kane and Triple H and Undertaker, you know, as far as the Attitude Era was concerned, you know. And what a nice guy, you know, what a great guy. You know, I remember we were backstage just kind of talking about the match, and I came up with an idea, and he said, "Oh, you still there?"
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, sorry, it just came up, weird thing on my computer. Yeah, I came up with an idea for the match, and he turns to me and says, "Oh yeah, good idea, man." All right, and I just kind of stared at him, you know, and then I just thought to myself, "Don't embarrass yourself," right? So I just walked around the corner, I did like a little happy dance, you know. Um, but yeah, that's what I mean by like I peaked too early, because after Mick Foley, like if your
Really.
name's not, I don't
Austin
know,
all the
yeah, Austin Rock, Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, Ric Flair, those kind of people. Now, how do you get like bigger than that? You know,
no.
so when all of these kind of indie imports, because obviously even guys like Kevin Steen, he wasn't Kevin Owens, when I wrestled him, so I look at him and I look at people like Roderick Strong,
Yes.
and and all I was thinking to myself was, I've been wrestling longer than you, so why would I be nervous wrestling you, And I think they actually appreciated, the that I wasn't just going to go, oh yeah, you do all of your moves, man. Like I'm here to make you look good because, I'm such a fan, you know. Um, I'll tell you who did get me though, um, was Marty Jannetty, you know.
Oh,
Yeah, because he was from obviously my childhood era, you know, and me, Joseph Connors, and Martin Kirby, over the course of the weekend, all had singles matches with him, and we had a gentleman's bet on who could have the best match with him, you know. And sorry, lads, I think I profoundly won that.
well,
um,
the David and the Goliath thing always works best for me. I always think the fast guy against the strong guy is always a really good dynamic. I'm
yeah,
guessing obviously the match went along those lines.
well, he wasn't very fast. He, obviously, he's getting on a little bit, and I don't know if you've seen pictures of his ankle at the time, but my God, it's like it absolutely destroyed it. Like I've heard he was in like a car wreck or something like that, but
Uh,
it was like legitimately out of joint, So he had to be quite careful with him. Um, but yeah, it was all just smoke and mirrors, like my favorite kind of match. Like you saw so much, but you didn't actually see so much,
yeah.
Um, but yeah, Janetti was a really nice guy. Crazy, really crazy,
Uh,
but in a funny way, you know. But
yeah.
yeah, he was kind of like the only import that I was like, oh my god, I'm wrestling Mike Janetti. Like to put that into perspective, even my brother, who isn't a wrestling fan, saw the match graphic online, and he got excited about it. Like I think the only person that he would have got more excited about me wrestling would have been Rick Martel, because he was a big Rick Martel when he was a kid, big Rick Martel fan when he was a kid. SummerSlam '92, baby.
Bloody hell. It's just but yeah, man, that's what like you sort of said, you can't really top the Mick Foley. Did the planned spot work? Did it go all right in the match? Did
Yeah,
it
yeah, yeah.
nail it?
Well, one of the funny stories was, I think everyone thought that Mick Foley was just going to come in, get the hot tag, do his moves, and be the hero of the show. And he turns around to Alex backstage. He goes, "Hell, when I defeat this guy, why don't I just turn straight into your finish? And then you catch me like 1, 2, 3, and like a kick out like a 3.2, And Alex just looks at him like, what?" Because like technically he was still under contract at the time, you know. So Alex turns around and says, "Won't Vince be angry?" And Foley goes, "No, I'll be good for business." You know, and like again, 4 years in, okay, I just think to myself, right, that's what a great lesson, that
Yeah,
this absolute wrestling megastar has just come in. He didn't have to. He could have taken the easy route, but he put over the local guy, you know, um, because it's best for the
business,
show.
rubbish.
Yeah, best for the show.
I
So
remember Oh, sorry, but I was remembering the story on Eddie Guerrero's autobiography of him doing the same sort of thing when he first got released by WWE in the late 90s. He went to like Ring of Honor, had a match against like Loki. Everybody presumed that he was going to demand that he win.
Yeah,
He was like, I'm here to put the guy over.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know, got to come
yeah.
back next month. Tickets. I don't.
Well, if you remember, Eddie Guerrero came over here in 2002 for that show called Revival. It was that brief time that he was released
Yeah,
before he went back and started feuding with Rob Van Dam. So he came over, and Brian Christopher, Grandmaster Sexay, came over for the same show. And so there you've got two guys who are, second, maybe even third generation wrestlers. Um, and they could not been any different. You know, Eddie went round shaking everyone's hand. I had a mouthful of digestive at the time. I was still technically a trainee. He went round, shook everyone's hand, kept to himself, was polite, professional, yeah, respectful. I think they had in their contract that if they were going to lose, they had to win a match as well.
right.
So Eddie was fine because it was a tournament, so he won his first round match, and then he had an absolute barnstormer with Doug Williams in the semi-final, which is on YouTube if you haven't seen it.
Oh,
Go and hunt that one down. It's fantastic. And he lost that one, setting up the Doug Williams Jody Flash final. But Grandmaster Sexay was booked in a hardcore match against Ulf Herman, the huge German Ulf Herman, and he was losing. Right, so he needed another match where he could win.
yeah.
Now, because this was being filmed for the old TV show Bravo, the old TV station, they needed match footage to put in the credits, to slice up and put in the credits that wasn't from the actual show. So a lot of the credit background wrestling was Grandmaster Sexay's dark match, that went on before the show, right? But the question was, who's he going to wrestle in this dark match? Okay, so I think at the time, Mark Sloan, I don't know if you know that name.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he bought the ring. He did all the production and stuff like that. And he was going to do this dark match with Grandmaster Sexay. And Brian Christopher turns around. He goes, "Nah, man, I can't sell for him. He's too small." Okay. So Johnny Storm gets brought in. Okay. Johnny Storm might be small, but he's fantastic. Okay.
Yeah.
"Nah, man, same problem. I can't sell for him. He's too small." And at which time, Ulf Herman, who's listening to all of this and would be coming over to England quite a lot in those years, stormed up to him, grabbed him around the throat, shoved him up against the lockers, and just went off. And I mean, if you know Ulf Herman, he likes to swear a lot anyway. But just went on this massive shouting rant, about how he should be more like Eddie, who's come over, who's respectful, who's helping the show, helping the business. Safe to say that Christopher nearly shat himself there, yeah. And in the end, he ended up wrestling an old British wrestler called Guy Thunder, who was around in the early 2000s.
Oh,
And yeah, it was just a nothing match, but it was in the contract. He had to win one if he was losing one, So, yep, fair game, all good. But I think that they all went out that night, after the show, and Eddie just went back to his hotel room because obviously he was struggling with,
yeah.
substance issues and stuff like that. And apparently Grandmaster Sexay was so annoying when they went out after that they literally just dumped him in the middle of London and never saw him again.
Oh,
So yeah, Eddie Guerrero,
top right.
consummate professional, Grandmaster Sexay, not so much.
Yeah, yeah. So, but yeah, obviously, long list of names. As I said, I know I said at the start as well. You've mentioned Mark Sloan there. Obviously, it's like a who's who of just general. You've obviously crossed paths with Dave Mastiff, Rampage, Will Ospreay. You mentioned Zack Sabre Jr.
Yeah.
It was just, well, what got you into this? Obviously, I know you've done everything probably that you want to do and then some. And obviously, you end up teaching now. What started the path? What made you be like, you know what? You said you was a big guy.
Yeah, yeah.
You just you look at yourself and think, I look like a wrestler. I'm going to be a wrestler. Or...
I definitely didn't think I looked like a wrestler, that's for sure. I tell you what, it's not nothing crazy. It's not a special story, like you're just a fan, aren't you? You're just a fan, and especially in like the 90s, you didn't even think British wrestling was a thing. You'd think if you want to be a wrestler, you got to go to America. And then along with Power Slam magazine, okay, there was another monthly magazine that came out called Wow magazine,
Yeah.
like World of Wrestling. Okay, way more pictures and less writing. um, and they used to review the Hammerlock shows that were going on at the time.
Yeah.
And I remember me and the guy who lived in the flat next to me, who was also a big wrestling fan, like we'd see these guys and we'd just like, oh my God, this is happening in England. Who would have known? Because obviously the internet wasn't even a huge deal, then anyway. So you can't just go online and put in British wrestling school, So we saw it in a magazine and they advertised that they had a school as well. So we went down twice to this Hammerlock school. The first time we learnt how to lock up and do a wrist lock in 4 hours. Because after we learnt how to do this wrist lock, we were just told to pair off and wrestle. Okay, pair off and practice. That's the line teachers use when they can't be asked to teach you. By the way, just go off and do your own thing.
Yeah.
And I remember John Ryan. Do you know that name, John Ryan? No. No, I saw him probably about 6 years later, like on a show, right? And I brought this story up to him, and he found it hilarious because it sounds just like him. Whilst we were pairing off and wrestling, after learning a lock up and a wrist lock, I hit my opponent with a clothesline, or what I thought was a clothesline. Like, I didn't know. They didn't teach me a clothesline. What am I supposed to be practicing? And John Ryan calls me over. He goes, "Can I swear on this channel, by the way?"
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. He goes, "That clothesline was shit." And I just kind of went, okay. Like, yeah, not any tips on how to improve the clothesline or, maybe stay away from that for now until you learn how to do it, just that clothesline was shit. And then we went back to just doing our own thing again.
Wow.
But still, like at that point, it was the only wrestling school that we knew. Okay, so we went again. And then the next session started with some shoot fighting, some shoot wrestling,
Right.
which is always a great thing to put untrained wrestlers in, because it just becomes, like a real scrap, to be honest, And before I had my go, my neighbour had a go. He dislocated his finger, so he had to sit out the rest of the session, go to hospital, get it realigned and all that. And we're just kind of like, there must be more to this, there must be something, where you actually go to a school and get taught, because we can do this in our front garden. You know, the whole like just pair off and wrestle thing. You know, um, luckily at the time where I was working in London, a lady named Sheila came to work there, and her cousin had a hand in running the EWW promotion that still goes down in Hastings now. And she gave me his number, and he told me about a wrestling school that was opening up in Finsbury Park, like in the middle of London, which was great for me because it was 3 towns over, maybe, from where I live with my folks, and gave me a number, and that's where I met Paul Ash and Phil Bedwell, who used to team as the New Breed, you know, and they were young lads who were very high spot heavy, you know, in their matches, like unashamedly high spot heavy as well. Like, and along with RJ and a guy called Tom Chamberlain, you know, for the next, say, 5 years, the five of us were pretty much inseparable. You know, like we went everywhere together. You know, we went to watch other shows, we wrestled on the same shows, we wrestled each other, we trained together, you know, and yeah, those were really good times, you know. But as well as that, it got me out of the hammerlock, not really learning anything, or you know, you go in and no one could be bothered to teach you, you know. I assume it wasn't always like that, you know, but by the time we got there, you know, it really was. And then the school that opened up in Finsbury Park was run by Alex Shane, and Paul and Phil were always there on hand to lend some help. And then a few months later, an older wrestler called Dino Scarlo came down to show us some real wrestling, you know, some old like World of Sport wrestling, which I got a great kick out of, because he had a hand in training Johnny Storm and Jody Flesh, you know. So those four kind of really kind of took me under their wing. And keeping in mind, at the time I was about maybe 20, you know, and Alex Shane was 23, 24, you know, not that much older than me. And these were Sunday morning sessions. So half the time he was coming in, like probably still drunk, with some bird on his arm you know, that he picked up the night before. You know, he really wasn't in the wrestling zone, let's say, or maybe he was too much in the wrestling zone, you know. So in the end, you just kind of got little bits from different people, you know. But obviously, that's the school where I met RJ, you know. And like, did he tell you the story of how we met, really?
I don't think, you know, he just kind of had some school stories, some training stories, and some
Yeah.
sort of smaller venue stories, but not not one that I think you're
Other
thinking
me.
of.
Well, these sessions were on Sundays, and he couldn't make them because he worked on Sundays. So the only other lesson that he could go to was the kids' class on the Saturday. So a couple of sessions in, Alex pulls me and Tom Chamberlain aside because he knew we were quite close to the school, and said, "Would you like some extra training?" We're like, "Oh yeah, that'd be great." And he said, like, he's got this really nice lad called Ross who really wants to train. He's been down to Mark Sloan's place in Portsmouth for one of his old weekenders that he used to put on, so he knows a little bit already. Would we mind coming to the kids' class to help our to help Ross? Because otherwise, Ross is just going to be wrestling underage kids.
It becomes bullying at some point, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, it turns out he ended up being a school teacher, so I assume that might have started there. I don't know. But yeah, to us, it just meant more training, you
Yeah.
know, or more time on the mats, more time under the learning tree, more time with a crash mat, you know, whatever thing you want to throw at it. But yeah, that's how we met. Ross and kids.
There we go. Just imagine he's I think head teacher now, and he, so I can only imagine the discipline at the school.
I see. I wonder if they know. Because he could really use that. Don't get sent to the principal's office because he'll kick you in the face.
Kids running off screaming, going home before going to the principal's office. Like, no.
So please don't send me. I'll be good, I swear.
Mentioned before, again, before I hit record, after we talked about the school, the graduate, the names, but you also mentioned to me that Travis credited you as, playing a hand in his training and, helping him progress to the level that he, got to.
Yeah, little did I know at the time. I was just being me, I guess, and apparently it really helped him. So when me and RJ had finished up our training, this would have been, I think we would have been doing shows, or what we used to call shows, probably for about a year at that point, and an opportunity came up for us to wrestle up north. I think me and Ross were travelling down to Portsmouth once a month to do the FWA Academy shows. And one of the fans that used to go there knew someone who was starting to run shows up Sheffield way and up Nottingham way. So he really liked what he saw with me and Ross on the FWA Academy shows. So he got us a booking up in Sheffield. And that's where we met a lot of the northern wrestlers, or more Midlands wrestlers that were around at the time. On that very first show, Chris Travis was teaming with a guy called Scotty Hex, and if I remember rightly, they were wearing neon yellow trousers as wrestling gear, pretending to be binmen, I think. That was the gimmick, yeah. And then you had someone like El Ligero, who was just still wearing his pajamas out to the ring, and a self-made mask. You had a great guy who unfortunately stopped, but he was the most talented out of all of them, back then, who wrestled as Cameron Knight back in the day. He was great, really good. But yeah, that's the first time we met, like a lot of the Midlands lot, and then because we got on with them, we'd end up going back, most months, traveling up to Nottingham, traveling up to Sheffield, and obviously I'm here now, so I enjoyed it so much. So I'm just saying night to my little girl. Night. Yeah, no, it was a great time, and obviously now there's so much wrestling around. I don't know how young wrestlers feel when they get that first outside booking, from the training school, or when they get invited to a new area, like a new territory, so to speak. But back then,
must be a buzz. Must be like achievement. Like you achieve something because
absolutely.
The safety of your home, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. I think now, because most of your matches are put out online, people in those areas can watch you wrestle at any time. You just put on their computer, put your name in, and your matches will come up. But back in those days, it really wasn't even a thing yet. So being invited up there was a real buzz for us, and it kind of let us know that what we were doing was the right thing. And there's a great photo that we have made because we were attached to the FWA at the time. The FWA was like the big the big indie promotion in this country. You know, it's like the ECW of England, as they say. Because me and RJ were like in any way associated with it. Like when we went up there, they were all looking at us like, "Oh my God, the pros are here," like, yeah, I think we were the only ones with like actual wrestling gear, like actual tights and boots and pads and stuff like that. Everyone else just had like stuff that they clobbered together, you know. So like me and RJ, I don't think we saw it really at the time, because we were just new, having some fun, you know. But thinking back, it's like, wow, like imagine that now, like walking into a dressing room and you're the only one with proper wrestling gear. It would be unheard of nowadays. But yeah, we took a photo with the referee up there, and it was just a little stare down photo,
right.
Pre-match. Didn't think anything of it at the time, And then when we did our big blow off match at Progress in 2014, 2014, 2015, 2014, when we did that big retirement match, someone took a photo of us doing the stare down in the ring, and the referee was standing exactly the same place as they did in this photo that was taken 14 years earlier, and someone had matched them up on top of each other and put it online. Yeah, and like I got it printed out and framed, like it's on my on the wall at my school. As a lovely memory. Yeah.
Is that Art Ross's first retirement or his second retirement?
Yeah, I'm only on one. I think after the first one, he stopped calling it a retirement and just said he had to. Yeah, he just said he was having some time off. Well, like with my one, like I genuinely thought that was it for me. As you said, so nicely at the beginning of our talk. You look at the cage match thing, and it's like the who's who. Like when you've wrestled everyone and you've wrestled everywhere, like in this country, unless you're looking to go abroad, to America or Japan or anything like that, where do you go next?
Yeah.
So at the end of 2016, I was honestly like, you know what? In a weird way, it felt like I was taking up space, And what I mean by that is because so many other people had moved away, had taken that next step, When people like nowadays, like Will Cruz, for example, and Brady Phillips, and I don't know who else is a top heavyweight nowadays. Even someone like Joseph Connors, who I kind of more see as like a middleweight rather than a heavyweight. Okay, but like a main eventer, you know what I mean? Is me staying around? Meaning, yeah, am I stuck in their spot? You know what I mean? Like if I move aside, does someone get more work? Does someone get noticed more? The chance to get noticed more? And I was looking at myself, and I didn't have any long-lasting injuries or anything like that. And I was like, wow, I could actually be one of those people that gets out of the business completely like health free and happy with what they've done. So I did. And then 15 months later, I get a call about coming back, and obviously you've got to realize in that 15 months the amount of shows that I put on personally with my school that I had to sit and watch everyone else wrestle on. it wasn't easy. You know, you really just wanted to. No, I wouldn't have done it like that. If I had done it like this, it would have got a much bigger response. You know, oh, I'd love to wrestle that. You know, that person. Like we could do something really good. You know, but I never did. You know, I never put myself on any of my shows. You know, because for the same reason that we just went through. You know, I'm taking someone else's spot. You know, and they need it more than me. You know, and I got a call from Alex Shane talking about the World of Sport thing that was happening on ITV. And of course, at the time, NXT UK had just come up as well. You know, what are the odds? You know, I wrestled for 15 years, you know, and the moment I quit, you know, NXT UK and World of Sport, you know, come about. You know, it's just bad luck. Right? But as he said, you know, the contract the NXT UK guys were on, where they couldn't really work anywhere else that had any kind of online following. Obviously, the plan was to hopefully get the World of Sport guys under the same kind of contract. You know, because as Alex said to me, you know, why would you pay, say, 20, 25, £30 a ticket to see Adam Maxted on World of Sport when you could see him down the road at your local leisure centre for £5? You know, so I get it from a business standpoint. So keep in mind, you know, who was signed for NXT UK at the time. If the same thing had happened, you know, exclusive contract wise, to everyone who was on World of Sport, who even would have been left in this country?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So Alex asked me to come back because he knew at that point I wasn't looking for like anything more. You know, my school was my number one priority, still is. But I think he appealed to the teacher in me, and he said, "Look, who's going to help teach these younger guys? You know, like the better way to do things. You know, who's going to help teach them and mold them? You know, so they're ready for that next step. You know." So I was like, "Oh, mate, Alex could sell ice to Eskimos. He really could. Like, I've heard the same thing about Vince McMahon, where you go in with a problem and
Go walk out, rainbows and unicorns. Like,
yeah, and you're like, damn it, how did he do that? But yeah, like he convinced me, and I ended up coming back probably about a week and a half after that conversation, because I kept myself in shape. You know, like training isn't a hobby to me; it's a part of life. You know, like I was probably in even better shape, to be honest, because I had the time to rest and really kind of just concentrate on what I was doing in the gym. And that's where I came back at the NGW show at Hull City Hall, completely unannounced, you know, that I was going to be there. And I remember the response it got, because when the video played, it was mine and Colossus's joint tag team video.
right.
So I think everyone just assumed it was Colossus, you know, because he was still active at the time, you know. And then I come out and there was this like audible gasp, and then there was the pop, you know, which I'll always remember. It was a great response. But then I think Ben at Southside, who I was very close with at the time, I think he might have been a little bit butthurt that I didn't make the first comeback on a Southside show.
Yeah.
Right? So Southside had a show the week after, I think, and it tied with the official tapings of the World of Sport, the World of Sport shows. So the amount of people that pulled out of Ben's Southside show
Yeah.
that weekend was crazy, you know. So obviously they thought the World of Sport film was going to be like a big deal, you know.
Yeah.
And it was really. I mean, back on terrestrial TV, you know, it's nothing to kind of throw your nose at. But then I remember looking at my wife and going, you know what? I bet Ben asks just because he needs guys, you know, like all these matches that he's advertised can't happen because of people pulling out, you know. So I get a message from Ben, who I know knows that I made this return, you know, and it said something like, "Hey mate, had a lot of dropouts, you know, at the show. Do you have any decent guys in Nottingham that could come in and do a good job?" You know, and I showed it to my wife, and I was just like, it seems like a bit of an odd thing to say, you know, considering I was quite a big part of Southside, you know, and the one thing that you would want to not necessarily save the show, but if you've lost a lot of guys, then you would want, like a big surprise return, you know. I was like, I don't really know how to take that. You know, like, do you have any decent guys in Nottingham? I mean, at the time, he was coming up to watch Nottingham wrestling quite a lot. So he knew what guys were in Nottingham, you know. And I was almost like, yeah, what's he really saying with that message? You know,
You're gonna kind of like put it out there, waiting for you to be like, well, yeah,
I'll do it. You know. So in the end, it got to like, I think it was like the day of the show, you know, like the main event of their show was in Stevenage, and it was, I think it was Robbie X, Dan Maloney, and Blake, who were doing a gang called GBH at the time. And they were wrestling Abyss, Bram, and a mystery partner. You know, I didn't know who the mystery partner was going to be, you know. But in the end, you know, I just said to him, like, I'm surprised you haven't asked me, Ben. You know, like, since I know that you know I'm back, you know. And he went, oh, well, I did think you'd want to. I was like, Ben, stop being butthurt about me coming back with a different company, all right? If you want me on your show, I will love to do it, okay? But you've got to tell me now, because the car leaving from Nottingham leaves in an hour, all right? So it's either yes or no, all right? So it ended up being a yes, you know, and that's how I ended up back in Southside. You know, teaming with Abyss and Bram in a 6-man hardcore monsters ball match or something like that, and I was like, wow, what a welcome back.
That's it. Yeah, you managed to get out unscathed and uninjured. This match back, I just changed all that.
Yeah, that would have been typical, wouldn't it? First match back, now I've got to retire again.
Well, at least she was on the same side as Abyss, so you know, that was a plus. So, obviously, you mentioned, like, you know, the early days at Hammerlock. Obviously, hopefully, hugely influenced you how not to teach at the school.
Oh yeah, so, I always have that in my head. You know, it's like, I think along with tag team wrestling, which I make no bones about. You know, I love it. I love teaching it. You know, I think a lot of people do it wrong nowadays. You know, so I like showing them how to do it the right way. You know, without risk, without kind of losing the excitement factor. Building drama and stuff like that. I think the other thing that really highlights the school is the variety. You know, I don't like cookie cutter wrestlers. I don't like people wrestling the same way. You know, I don't like them looking the same way. I don't like them acting the same way. You know, bring your own originality, you know, to whatever you're doing, you know. And I always have that in my head. I say, look, you might learn more from a different teacher. You know, a different teacher might be able to put something to you in a way where you understand it more, okay? But you will never come to my school and walk away saying, I didn't learn anything today, okay? Like, and that's something that I take immense pride in, you know? Like, there's so much that goes into wrestling. You know, are there people that can out wrestle me? Absolutely. You know, are there people that can show you way cooler moves than me? Absolutely. Okay. But when it comes to this, you know, like the mind side of wrestling, you know, why, yeah, like why you're doing what you're doing, you know, putting some meaning behind what you're doing, you know, that's where the school excels, you know. So as long as you're listening when you come to the school, you will never walk away saying, I didn't learn anything today, you know.
I don't know if you listen to it or not, but I'm a massive fan of William Regal's podcast. And it's been implemented on there. Just a little bit, some little nuggets he says that it's really good for like new wrestlers to listen to as well, because he picks up on certain things.
Yeah.
I think like one episode he went on for 40 minutes about the importance of a good pin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
But it's just little things like that where it's just like, you know, he's just making everything mean something.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the beautiful thing about wrestling is because it's more performance art, you know, than it is a sport, you know, even though a lot of what we do is very sport based, you know, there's more than one way to do something.
Yeah.
Okay. Like if I can't play football, I ain't getting to the Premiership. You know, I ain't playing in the World Cup. You know, you got to be able to play football. You know, are there levels of how good you can be at football? You know, and I'm sure there's like intricacies that go into football that, as not really a football fan, you know, I know nothing about. You know, but I'm sure those very well paid players, you know, like the superstar players, you know, have those kind of intricacies. That's why they are where they are. But when it comes to wrestling, I'm never a big fan of someone saying, you have to do this. You know, this is how you should be doing it.
Oh yeah, no, it's always like suggestions or
yeah, absolutely. Like it's little tips, and like say you had 10 wrestlers, you know, if I said something, it would probably make sense to 5 of them, you know, and the other 5 would go, that doesn't really make sense to me. Okay. And someone like RJ, okay, who is a completely different style to me, yet thinks about wrestling in the same way, you know, might say it just a slight bit differently, and it will make sense to those other 5, you know. And like, I think when people say, no, this is how it needs to be done, this is how it has to be done, you know, I mean, you look around, you know, like Randy Orton, for example, who I'm a massive fan of. The way he does things, there's nothing traditional about it. You know, like when someone says, "Oh, when you get hit, you have to take a back bump," you know, like he doesn't take a back bump. You know, he sells it way more realistically. You know, like you would in an actual fight.
you go down to a knee or something, or
Yeah, yeah, and then sometimes he massively oversells it. You know, um, and then some people would look at that and go, "Oh no, like, well, you're not Randy Orton, you know, so you've got to do it this way." It's like, well, Randy Orton wasn't always Randy Orton, you know, like he got to where he is because he did it the way that made sense for him, you know. At the end of the day, as long as it's safe, it looks good, and it gets an audience response, I've got no problem with it, you know.
I say it's and that's the thing. It should be different for everyone, like, because otherwise everybody just looks the same, you know. And the variety is the price of life, especially when it comes to wrestling.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, a good show should have strong dudes, flippy dudes, tag teams, women's.
Yeah.
It's, you know, a bit of everything.
Well, case in point, you know, look at the old World of Sport days, you know, where there was fantastic wrestlers, fantastic technicians. Okay, if I said to like the average wrestling fan, can you name me 3 old British wrestlers? Okay,
Daddy, Stixx,
can they
Kendo
name
Nag.
exactly? Okay, what is traditional about those 3? Hell, what's wrestling about those 3? From a technical standpoint, like I doubt there was 5 wrestling moves between them. Yet it was the way they looked, the presence they had, you know, the way they carried themselves, the way they did their thing. That is the thing that made them stand out. Okay, who were the top superstars of the last 30 years in American wrestling? You know, Roman Reigns now,
Yeah,
Cena, Austin, Hogan.
yeah.
Okay, how many moves, man? you know,
Yeah. It's
like
WCW in the late 90s highlighted it. The top guys are the guys that have the moments, not the
yeah,
match.
yeah.
You moments.
Moments over matches, and I mean, Steve Austin was fantastic when he was stunning Steve Austin.
Hollywood Blonde's one of my favorite teams.
Oh yeah, fantastic team. Um, even his US title run, his TV title run before that and after that, fantastic stuff. Yet he gets more popular when he learns how to slow down what he's doing in the ring and get more presence outside of the ring.
Yeah.
I say to the students all the time, at first, you're so busy concentrating on the moves, okay, that you can't take in everything around you, okay, when you're first out in front of an audience. Once you stop worrying about the moves, you actually realize that wrestling is the stuff between the moves. It's got nothing to do with the actual moves itself, because we can all do moves. What we all can't do is hold a crowd's attention when nothing's happening in the ring. You know what I mean? You do a slam, of course, it's loud, it's going to get people's attention. You jump off the
Do you
top rope.
slam? Do you sell it that little bit more? Do you react to it differently? Stuff like that's how people. It's how you react to things
Yeah,
and stuff.
yeah, absolutely. How you build things up, how you come out of things, how you move to the next kind of
Transition.
series of movements. Yeah, um, and it's a fun part for me, as a teacher, when one of the students, when it clicks, you know, you just see it and you're like, that wrestler has had their light bulb moment. you know, they get it now, okay, and everything's going to be heading in a completely different direction from now on. But I had it in, of all places, Butlins. You know,
Well,
like
people credit that the seaside scene because you're just doing it over and over like the same guy for like 10 weeks, like 2 matches a day.
um, it wouldn't always be the same person. Um, I think when you're on a crew like that and you're doing touring shows, you're part of a team, like a 6, 8, or 10-man team, you know. So there's only so much variety of who you can go on with, because you'll have 5 villains, 5 baby faces, So if you're a baby face, you're on with one of those villains, you know. So if you're doing 2 shows a day for 7 weeks, chances are you probably would have wrestled all of them at least 15 times, over the summer, some of them more than 15 times, you know. But then as a promoter, you know, the last thing you want in that kind of environment is complication, you know, because you're doing a show at 1 p.m., okay, and then you're doing a show at 6 p.m., the show and the setting up and taking down of the show is everything in between, okay. You need to be able to look at your crew and go, you 2 on together, you 4 on together, you 2 on together, okay, and know that it's going to be a good show still, that everyone's going to know their job and know exactly what the promoter wants, and what the crowd need. Okay, like we get it a lot now. Like I think since I've come back, I've done 80% of my wrestling for the company Megaslam. You know, who around the Midlands, you know, are very much a touring company. I think this past weekend they've headed out to Ireland for the first time to do 3 shows over there. You know, it's every weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Then over the summer, you know, it's almost every day, you know. And I was speaking to the promoter, and that's exactly what he wants. He just doesn't want any complication, you know. Like he doesn't want to read out the card and then be bombarded with questions over by his desk, you know. He doesn't want to read out the card and have wrestlers say, "Oh, well, can we do it like this? Can we do it like this?" No, I don't really want to lose today. You know, like, you know, can he just kick out of my finish? You know, are we allowed to use a chair? You know, can we fight through the crowd? You know, and stuff like that. You know, he just reads out the card. You look across the room. You go, "Cool, that's who I'm on with." Okay, when are we on? We're on first, or we're on second, we're on third. Okay, we know exactly kind of what's required, you know, for the show, you know, because it's a team, you know, no one's trying to outshine anyone else on the team, you know, we're all working together, you know, for the good of the show. Okay, so that is the real difference between, you know, the kind of family touring circuit and your individual kind of spot indie show. Okay, most of the wrestlers on those little spot indie shows want the audience talking about them when they leave. Therefore, they want to outshine everyone. You know, they don't care where they are on the show. They're just going to do whatever they want. Okay, and it's a real kind of selfish attitude to have, in a way, because if they were on last and everyone else was thinking the same way as them, then by the time they go out last, the crowd have seen everything. You know, and you have to get dumped on your head about 20 times just to get just to get a golf club, you know. Whereas some people, you know, in a way, it's not a selfish way of thinking, because wrestling is about making a name for yourself and trying to outshine the people around you, you know, because of the competition, you know. So it's 2 ways of thinking about it, really, and I think it comes down to what you as an individual prefer, you know, and I very much prefer being part of a team, you know, who works together, you know. I mean, don't get me wrong, sometimes I'll be on first, sometimes I'll be on last, you know, but I know that if I'm on last, I don't have to flat out kill myself, you know, just to get the audience to actually react and pay attention, because the rest of the team haven't put me in that position. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it shows there does definitely seem to be 2 different dynamics to different promotions to go from, like you sort of said. Some probably like the old school mentality where the first match is set, it progresses throughout the show until get to the main event, everybody's hyped and just ready to explode.
Mm-hmm.
Just wrestling built it up for that main event. Or then you've got other promotions where it's just up and down, kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at AEW. You know, this past Saturday. You know, I haven't watched it yet, but I saw the match card, and I was like, which one's the main event? You know, like there's so many matches there that could be considered a main event, and they're probably going to be wrestled like they're the main event. You know,
Yeah, I watched it, and yeah, there were, but
yeah,
I know sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. It's a weird one. I think it's what you come to expect from promotions. Sometimes, like certain promotions, like WWE back in the day, you could pretty
mm-hmm.
much guarantee the first 5 matches on a pay per view were just enjoyable,
Yeah,
but it was always the last 3 matches of a pay per view. You know, the
uh-huh.
last 3 were always the best ones,
Yep.
especially the
As
attitude.
a
First 5 matches, you could pretty much just get, you could throw away if you wanted.
And you probably would if you watched them back now, because
Oh,
some of those matches were it's when people
something.
it's like when people say, oh, the Attitude Era, oh, you can't beat it. It's like, have you actually watched back some of that stuff? It's
I
gone
did it.
off.
I did it recently. Well, probably a couple of years ago. I went through the network and watched every pay-per-view from 1990 to Armageddon '99, the last one of that year.
Nice.
And it was a ride. But 90 clearly the best year.
Yeah.
W in the '97. That's when it peaked.
Oh yes. Villain Bret Hart and the Hart Foundation. Okay, big fan. Big fan. But yeah, I think if you think about it, as far as the shows go, it's okay for a company like AEW. It's okay for a company like WWE to have these kind of peaks and valleys type shows. We have big match, smaller match, big match, smaller match. Okay, they've got 20,000 people in the crowd. If 10,000 of them are tired by the main event, there's still 10,000 people making noise. When you've got 200 people in the crowd, and 100, and 100 of them are tired.
Yeah.
The difference in noise between 100 and 200 people is very noticeable. And a lot of smaller shows in this country don't even pull to 200. So by giving them like 9-10 matches, I actually genuinely feel bad for the main event sometimes, because they're the ones who have to take the most risks most of the time. They're the ones who have to do the bigger stuff and make their match look and feel bigger, and they're just not really getting anything for it. It's actually quite heartbreaking.
Right, dude, I've just clocked the time. I've kept you on. Sorry, dude, I just kind of lost track of just talking. Right, I'm going to we're going to do a just to sort of end the episode. So I'm going to give you two options of wrestlers. Say if I said Austin or Rock, who would it be?
Austin.
Bret Hart or Ric Flair?
Bret Hart. Bret Hart over everyone.
Good choice, man.
In fact.
Mankind versus Mankind or Undertaker?
Oh, that's a hard one. Mankind, purely because he could also do comedy.
Yes, good answer.
All right.
That's I'll move on. Last one's a bit out of left field. Jon Moxley or Brian Pillman?
Brian Pillman.
Yes.
Because Brian Pillman completely switched his character from this high-flying, kind of thoroughbred babyface, smooth-shaven, and turned into the loose cannon. Like Jon Moxley was always this,
Yeah.
And I hadn't seen him do this. Okay, I'll tell you what. Then let me ask you a question. 3 matches. Okay, as random as you want to make them. All right. What are your dream matches?
Oh, dream matches. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Any era. Against any era.
Bret Hart versus Kurt Angle. It's got to be the first one.
That's on mine as well.
Yeah. I would say Jon Moxley versus the loose cannon Pillman, because I've had it in my head for a while.
Yeah.
And I would say, I've got to put Mr. Perfect. Mr. Perfect versus Bryan Danielson.
Oh, very nice. Which era Perfect?
92 the SummerSlam 89, I think it was when he fought Bret, wasn't
it? 91. 91.
Was it? Oh yeah, 91.
Yeah.
91.
Yeah, good picks. Good picks. I mean, there's so many great wrestlers from throughout the eras. Okay, so it is a hard question. Kurt and Bret was always my top one from a wrestling standpoint. One that could have happened, and I wish had, especially at WrestleMania, would have been Rock versus Michaels. You know, I think as far as the energy in that match, it would have just been off the fucking chart. You know, and then a weird one, slightly controversial. You know, a lot of people, you know, are half and half about the man now. Okay, but one I really wanted to see was Mick Foley against Benoit. Just because they're both insane.
Yeah, no.
Like, they're both insane, and I just think it would have been physical as hell. But
would have been a good house as well. Would have
yeah,
been just hardcore brawler against the technician.
yeah, it would have been physical as hell and completely outside the box. You know, like if you've got Brett and Angle for tradition, you know, then you have Benoit and Foley for something way over here. You know.
Macho Man versus Eddie would be another one as well.
Oh yes, yes, that would have been great. That would have been great. And we almost got Eddie versus Shawn Michaels, didn't we?
Yeah.
As I hear it, you know, that would have been a great one as well. Unfortunately.
Versus Eddie feud, I think would have been a really good feud.
Yeah, 100%.
But dude, it's been an absolute pleasure.
No, my man, I could talk about wrestling all day, every day, and still not get bored. so
we'll do it again, hopefully, then at some point. And
why don't we do a simulcast with RJ?
I nearly suggested that at some point. We're gonna I'll bring it up next when I speak to him, and we'll be like, yeah. I would just sit back and let you two. Just, do you want to plug the school, your socials?
Hey man, just House of Pain Wrestling Academy. Follow us on everything. Okay, so it's either House of Pain Wrestling or Hop Wrestling. Don't worry about me so much. You know, like you don't have to follow me. Just follow the school. Follow the people coming out of the school. You know, and represent Nottingham wrestling.
That's the one. East Midlands, East Side.
Slide.
Dude,
we'll have to do that. We'll have to do a West Side versus East Side feud.
Of the who we got down, it'd be like Birmingham, wouldn't it? You'd have to get like a Brummie school or something involved.
Yeah. I'll see if Mastiff's doing anything.
Wow. Unstoppable force, the unmovable object.
Oh, reinforce the ring, as they say.